Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. We have plenty of seats up front. It's not middle school. You can sit in the front. It's okay. I'm not going to call on you. Don't even worry about it. Welcome to Green Apple Books on the Park. Thank you so much for joining us. I am so delighted to be celebrating Husbandry tonight by Matthew Dickman, accompanied by Tomas Moniz. Let's give it up for both of them. I'm really excited to be here. Matthew's work has long spoken to me as a reader and as a writer, and I'm really glad to be celebrating this totally brilliant new collection of his. So thank you for including Green Apple on your tour. And I'm also excited to be joined by author and the best pen pal in the world, Tomas Moniz. Tomas is a mainstay in the Bay Area literary community, and I'm really glad he's joining us tonight. So this is gonna be a really special evening. I would be remiss if I didn't give you a little bit of bookstore business. Please do check out our event calendar on our website at greenapplebooks.com. We have a really great season. If you like events like the one you are attending right now, you might like some other ones that we have coming up. I would encourage you to look at the full calendar. Please do buy books if you are able to. I'm not above it. I will ask you to buy books from this bookstore that you are in right now. I can think of a couple of books that you might want to pick up tonight from the two authors that are joining us. Wonderful. Oh, we have an example. Maybe it is middle school. Show here. So thank you very much. We always appreciate it. If you've been here before, you've definitely heard me say that when you buy books from us, not only are you supporting us as an independent bookstore, but you're also supporting the writers who put so much work into making these books. And then you get to have a book, and they will likely sign it at the end. So it's yours. And that might be the best part. So thank you for supporting us when you're able. We appreciate it. Thank you too for keeping your masks on. We're just asking that folks keep their masks on between sips of beverage. We want you to imbibe, but we don't want the pandemic to still be happening, but it is. So we're trying to move forward safer. And we also want to give our authors the grace to take their mask off while they're on the microphone. So thank you for being cool about it. We appreciate it. The run of show tonight, we're going to hear some poems. We're going to have a conversation, and then we might hear a little more poetry, and we'll have some time for an audience question and answer at the end. So if you have questions, keep them in mind, think of them, and we'll get to as many as we can. Without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce the two folks joining us this evening. First, Tomas Moniz is a father, writer, teacher, and performer. His debut novel, Big Familia, was a finalist for the Penn Hemingway Debut Novel Award in 2020, a finalist for a Lambda 2020 Award for Bisexual Fiction, and a finalist for the Forward Review Indies Award. He edited Rad Dad, Rad Families, and the kids' book Collaboration/Collaboración. He's an artist affiliate at the Headland Center for the Arts, and he resides in Oakland, California. Let's make some noise for Tomas Moniz. And last but most certainly not least, Matthew Dickman is the author of Husbandry, Wonderland, Mayakovsky's Revolver, and All-American Poem, winner of the APR Honigman First Book Prize. His other honors include a Guggenheim Fellowship and the Sarton Award for Poetry from the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. He is joining us from Portland, Oregon, and tonight we are celebrating his book, Husbandry. Let's give it up for Matthew Dickman.
Okay, it's like getting into a cockpit. Hi.
Hi.
Hello. Thanks for coming out on a July night for poetry. That's amazing. Yeah, we're going to, well, I'm gonna read you some poems from Husbandry. This is only my second reading from this book, so I don't really have like chatter in between yet, like little fun quippy things that like professional authors have. So I'm gonna read to you as if you were my two kids, and then Tomas and I are gonna have a little conversation. Do you have any questions? And then I thought I would read one more poem to you to put you out into this beautiful San Francisco night. And this is a bookmark my son Owen made me. So I brought that with me. Okay. This is called building tension. The gift. When during one of our dreaded nights on the couch together, planning our escape from one another, like starved sailors on an island, where one wanted to stay beneath the palm trees and hold hands and listen to the sea, even as they starved. And the other wanted to leave because for her, the unknown was always better than the known. She told me that part of the reason she wanted to have a child, to have one with me, was that somewhere inside she knew she would leave and wanted me to have something once she left. An animal for me, a friend on the island, someone to love other than her. I think I said, oh. I think I was supposed to say, thank you. Thank you for this. As if the child was a gift wrapped in glittering paper from the emissary of twilight, a parting gesture that was supposed to make the parting about kindness and not cruelty. I said, oh. But inside my body, I was walking through the snow with Owen in my arms, trying to cover his face from the cold. I was walking through a forest at night, holding Owen's hand and ringing a bell to find his older brother. What a strange gift, I thought. Oh, I thought. And that oh, meaning, oh, of course, who would ever want to be with me? Children are miracles, people say. Children are gifts, people say. And about death, some say we are food for worms, my love. We are food for worms. But I think we are leftover honey for raccoons. I wanted you to have something, she said. And in that moment, like Christ turning the water, spinning it with her long fingers into wine, she miraculously took everything and gave everything too. Father. In the unstory of my life, I am 13 years old, and my father lifts me into the air and then catches me again and again, pulling me into him. Or I am 13 years old, and my father sits on the porch with his arm around me and says, yes, yes, look, everything will be fine. I'm here. In the unstory, he has his ties and pressed shirts hanging in the closet next to my mother's blouses. The smell of his cologne washes over everything like a pot roast, roasting all Sunday. But in the story of my life, my father's sons have to call him again and again and again and again, like small children hitting a drum they can't stop hitting. They have to beg for his attention. And one even dies in his way for him, and like life is buried without him. In the story of my life, I inherit the fathers of other kids, other sons. How lucky am I? Fathers with names like Joseph, Yosef, Josiah, Yasef, meaning he will add, meaning he will lift you up and catch you, meaning he will sit with you and your sorrow will be his too. Fathers with names like Ernie, Ernest, Ernesto, Arnost, meaning kindness, meaning he will walk among the lepers of your actions and listen to them, meaning he will not fail you even as you fail yourself. Right now, dusk is moving around the house like a bad babysitter, waiting for her boyfriend to come over, reapplying her eyeliner. Outside, some coyotes are lighting up the air like teenagers. Meanwhile, in the story of my life, I lift my 3-year-old up into the air and then catch him, but also catch myself. In the story of my life, I put my arm around my 13-year-old, but also around myself. When I feed them, I feed myself. When I cool a fevered forehead with a cold rag, I cool my own anger. When I leave, I also return to them and return to myself. I know there are really 3 children in the story of my life. I must make a home for each of them. I'm gonna try sitting just because the cockpit's too tight. That feels so much better. Okay. Ooh, here's some patter in between. I like this poem because it's got, I was gonna say I try to eat healthy. I don't know what the fuck I'm saying. But it has one of my favorite foods in this poem. Lilac. One look at the lilac, one smell, and my childhood is dogs scratching at the sliding glass door, bits of bottles coming up like weeds in the grass, a dirty towel down by the foot of the tree, Lysol cans, small packets of Land O'Frost turkey meat, there in front of me in spring, in the wonderfully fat rain, flowering purple, and whatever the pinkish purple is called, and the white ones too, they smell like my siblings, like the backs of my infant son's ears, like my son who I would kill someone for. Before he was born, I wouldn't kill anyone, but now I would. And after, I'd get a coffee from Starbucks, a coffee and a piece of that amazing lemon frosted lemon cake. And I'd think nothing of it and read the paper and hold him against my chest and listen to his body living alive outside his mother's body, and the lilac outside on the street, outside everyone, and heavy in the rain. Okay.
Was it the lemon cake?
Yeah, it was. It wasn't Land O'Frost because there are 2.
I was questioning.
Yeah. Land O'Frost is that's awesome. Some potato bread, some mayonnaise, some Land O'Frost. You don't have to admit to it, but you like it. This poem is called Porpoise. In the morning, my 3-year-old looks up from his cold glass of milk, the color of a white dogwood flower, and says, "Papa, you have a penis and I have a penis." I say, "Yes, you have a penis and I have a penis. But I'm a princess and you are not a princess." And I say, "Yes, you are a princess and I am not a princess." Outside, the white animal-shaped clouds are pulsating above the schoolyard. "I have an older brother," my son says. And I say, "Yes, you do." "You have an older brother too, Papa." "Yes," I say, "I have an older brother too, but he is dead." Now one of the clouds is opening its mouth like an exhausted lion. My son wants to ask me how he died, but instead he says, "How did he get dead?" I love this question. To get something is to receive something. It is the opposite of loss. It is the act of gaining, of having something given. And so my older brother wasn't taken by death, but acquired it, collected and sustained it. Now, one of the clouds is moving toward another, like an adult, toward a child who's not theirs. He was sad, is what I tell my son. He was sad, and he got dead on purpose. Papa, you get sad, and I get sad, but we have popsicles too. Yes, I say, we have popsicles too. And porpoises, Papa, we have porpoises. Sometimes our mornings together stretch out like an eternal current, like a cloud. In the yard, the dogwood burns out in the sun. It just stands there while the sun subsumes it. Let's see here. Yeah. The fathers, this is called The Fathers of Invention. There's a little patter about this poem, is that in my first book, All American Poem, I wrote a poem called The Black Album that's in there. And although he's not mentioned in it, it's about this experience this poet, my friend Major Jackson, and I had driving through Vermont and a bear jumping out in the road. It's partly about that. And then in Major's last book, he wrote a poem that kind of had something about a bear and me in it. And so I thought I'd just continue the conversation. So this poem is like part of that conversation, which like is only interesting to like probably Major and I. So the fathers of invention. Major Jackson and I are fond of drinking dark beer and talking about fathers, of his who would leave and return like a season wearing a night shirt made out of fall leaves and wood smoke, of mine who no one can say left as he was never really there, a dream someone has about money, that when they wake, there is nothing but a penny's worth of light on the pillow next to them. When the ghosts of our fathers ask us to set the table, we set the table. But no matter how we fold the napkins, they are always unhappy. When the bodies of our fathers ask our bodies to be theirs, we set ours on fire. Now our own sons are staring us down like bear cubs staring down a darkness from a forest that only exists for them. Now we are inventing it as we go. We have experimented with holding their hands and hugging them, sitting on the couch with them. We are trying to make sure their feelings don't turn into baseball bats or guns or the unmade bed of an inpatient's medicinal ozone. Before we were the fathers of sons, we were just sons trying to survive our fathers, flying down a hill inside a blue Jetta with a Blaupunk cassette player. And when our sadness threatened to flood the whole car, Major turned up the roots so that whatever darkness he and I thought we were heading toward lifted, and a kind of light pulled up into the driveways of our minds, like a father returned home from a business trip he should never have made. I'm just going to read, I think it's just one more poem, and then we can have a little talk. All Hallows Eve. Okay, I'll just say, for those of you who are parents whose kids have grown up a little bit, you'll know this, but I think one of the most interesting things to talk about with kids, and they have the most interesting questions about them, is like these big things that we seem to be terrified of as adults, like death. I mean, talking to my youngest about death, talking to my 5-year-old about death, talking to my 15-year-old about death is a little different. The 5-year-old has much better questions than the 15-year-old. Though I will say I love them equally, but I'll also say this about a 5-year-old and a 15-year-old is that they have the same like they're at the same sort of emotional wavelength, like of like shit they can't control. Like when I asked a 15-year-old to do something, he doesn't mean to, but he's like, ugh, you know, and the 5-year-old does the same thing. It's amazing. Yeah, they're like the same in so many ways. Okay. Anyway. Yeah. All Hallows Eve. Owen keeps asking what happens to his body when he dies. What happens inside the body? And I tell him, all your organs slow down. Your lungs and heart, your liver, and the blood in your body stops moving around your body until everything stops and becomes quiet and rests. He wants to know if it's the same thing for birds. And when birds die, what happens to their feathers? If the feathers stay up in the sky? And what is a wolf? He wants to know. And can it eat us? He says that some things come back after they die, but we don't want them to. No, I say. Sometimes that's all we want, no matter what. For someone we love to come back, no matter how terrible or painful it might be. His older brother, Hamza, is alone in his room again, lying very still on his bed, working out the compass of being a teenager on his Nintendo. I want to take both boys out into the yard and have them bathe their feet in the October grass, pull the cold air over them like a woolen overcoat. But I need to get dinner going and I need to grab the clothes from the dryer and fold them. I don't know what we're going to eat tonight. I don't know how I will get the house cleaned up before it's time for bed. Before I became a father, my greatest fear was dying in a plane crash, the plane stalling through a cloud of birds. Now I sit at the kitchen table and stare at the gas bill, like looking out the window at a car on fire. Sometimes I want to be a ghost or a vampire, a zombie slowly walking over a hill, hungry for something it can't name, but with arms outstretched, begs for anyway. Thanks for listening to those poems. Oh, yeah, Dee.
Nice reading.
Thanks.
I'm enjoying it.
Thank you so much.
All right, welcome. One thing I like to do that I did a lot of writing about parenting in the past, and for all those events, I used to say, kid noises are welcome. We can speak and read over toddlers, babies, adult noises, take it outside. Anyways, I'm just trying to normalize bringing kids to events next time. So although there's none here, except for us at Heart, I just want to remind ourselves that, so thank you. Okay, I've got about 3 or 4 questions. We can jump into this. And I just want to say also that I really, reading this book, I did it when I was babysitting my grandchild. When my son was outside playing basketball. And it was just really, powerful to kind of delve back into the kind of everyday parenting that I'm no longer doing. That
Right.
My assumption is you're still in the middle, the thick of it, right?
Very much.
And so I wanted the first question is just to kind of jump into that notion of, I really appreciated that your poems talked about fathering and parenting, but dealing with the kind of hard work of it, the everyday element of it, the laundry, the emotions, the difficult conversations. So I just wanted to hear you speak maybe to a little bit about how becoming a father or kind of incorporating kind of relationships with younger people have impacted both you and maybe your craft as well.
Sure. It certainly impacts your whole life. I mean, I don't want, that seems so simple, but it does. Everything changes, your schedules change, I've always loved interacting with children. Before I ever had kids, I worked with kids at a preschool. I was a nanny for almost 2 years for a young child. And so I always felt at home, and I felt interested in interacting with children. And then I sought out becoming a father myself. I started parenting my oldest when he was Owen's age, when he was 5, my 15-year-old, when he was 5. So I've parented him for a decade. It seems, I mean, a lot of like the language we have around parents is so old. It feels so weird. It would feel so weird for me to say like, I'm his stepdad, because there's nothing step about having a child almost full time, and then, and then having Owen from birth, till now. Tomas, I'm not answering your question at all. Okay, well, here's something. I rent for my kids and we rent a little house, and there's the top floor of the house is a separate apartment. We have these really great neighbors upstairs, and when they first moved in, we share a washer and dryer downstairs. And I remember Jordan, they don't have kids. I remember Jordan, who's wonderful, came to me and said, how do you want to do like the laundry schedule? And I was like, laundry schedule? He's like, well, like, are there days you like to do laundry or not? And I was like, bruh, I do laundry all day long. I've got a teenager who suddenly something switched in his hormones and he sweats even when it's cold out. I've got a toddler, I was like, how about you tell me when you want to do laundry and we will,
we'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out. Yeah.
Right. Well, it's just like, because I think oftentimes the kind of mainstream representation of fatherhood is just kind of like guffawing, kind of, I don't know what I'm doing, which we all don't know what we're doing, let's be honest. Right. But like, that's the
but
joke
that kind of cartoon of
exactly.
it, like, it's dad's night, so I guess it's frozen pizza.
Right. Yeah. Or also like, oh my goodness, you changed the diaper, so you're the greatest father in the world, which is like, no, like it's
super low bar.
It's exactly. So like, so sitting with that and wanting, I mean, obviously it's impacting our writing and our thinking and who we are, and wanting to deal with that balance of like not overstepping what we're doing, but at the same time acknowledging the work that we're doing. And within our culture of patriarchy and toxic masculinity and all this kind of stuff, like fatherhood's for me been a real, it's the thing I've written about continuously, it feels like, but it's also the thing that I struggle with in my writing so often. And I just, how's that sat with you? And
well, I think part of, and something I hear in what you're saying, which I find sort of true, is like those kind of the old structure of like the caretaker, homemaker, motherhood, and the sort of provider fatherhood structure, the Western that we've grown up with. I certainly grew up. I think, good or bad, one thing it does is it disallows both those people from experiencing a kind of fuller humanity. It shortchanges everybody. And I mean, for me with fathering, I grew up without a father. I eventually, as a young adult, I adopted, I was lucky enough to be able to sort of adopt other fathers. But like when I was a kid growing up, I mean, fathers in my neighborhood were scary, So, I mean, I don't think the bar should start for fathers with like, can you change a diaper or make dinner? I think the bar should start with like, are your kids afraid of you or not? You know what I mean? And like start there and go from there. Sort of thing.
That reminds me of that one line. I wrote a couple of them that really resonated with me. That here it is right here. This is, I think it's from your first poem. There are so many ways to eat the young, which is just like it's kind of an awful way to think about our adults' relationships with children, right? Like so many ways, intentionally, unintentionally, we
and that's kind of, I mean, it's kind of a dramatic way to say it. I mean, we do
poetic
way to say it, but we do that. I mean, I think it's I'm a single dad. I have my kids all week, and then they're with their mom on the weekend, which is great. I have something that a lot of single parents don't have, that like weekend break. But also like something with single parents often is like this thing, I think single parents need to keep an eye out for is partnering their child, right? Is like making their child their partner in many ways that, add stress on the child and the childhood. And that's something that I really try to work hard at, like loving them, being their father, being their parent, but I'm not supposed to be their best friend. You know what I mean? They're not supposed to keep me company when I'm lonely. Like that's not their job. They have, as a 15-year-old and a 5-year-old, they've got other jobs to do, including making their beds. I'm happy for them to do that. So yeah.
Well, we won't solve that question.
Yeah.
So maybe we could change to like a craft question.
Okay.
I mean, one of the things I think sometimes when we talk about particularly parenting, that becomes the overriding conversation, which is I want to recognize clearly these poems are really powerful. And I'll just read what I wrote here, which is the structure of your poems, those 2-line stanzas and the length of the lines. For me, it really created this enjoyable flow, a way the narrative kind of moved quickly, almost like a story in this way, and had this rhythm, this beat. And I was just wondering if you could, and some of the poems, if you haven't read the book yet, have maybe there's like 4 that have just like one line, which are really like those profound moments, it seems like, in the narrator's kind of experience of the time that we're in here. But do you want to speak to the craft of writing these? Did they kind of all come out the same way, or is this kind of a rhythm that you like to work with?
They started coming out, well, I mean, in slightly different ways. I mean, first of all, like the real story about these poems is that in the beginning of those first lockdowns during the pandemic, I was getting together on Zoom with my poetry papa, Joe Millar, who's sitting in the back there, who in that poem Fathers, that's the Joseph, and his wife, my poetry mom, Dorianne Locks, and the poet Sharon Olds, who's my aunt, and then my best friend, Mike McGriff. And we're these friends who were getting together once a week to check in on Mondays, Poetry Monday, to check in on each other's lives, and then to play this poetry game where we would all give each other like 4 words. So we'd have this list of 12 or more words. And then we would go off for 45 minutes, write a poem, with the game being trying to get as many of those words in as you could. And then we'd come back and share them. And that was it. I mean, that was the beginning and end of any sort of like workshoppy criticism of them. We just wanted to make work and check in with each other. And that's where these poems came from. The subjects of the poems were sort of happening in real time. And I had never really written in couplets or tercets, really. Like, there are tercets and couplets in my last book, Wonderland, but like the honest truth is they were all paragraphs. And my twin brother was like, you should make a book that looks different than your other ones. So I super randomly like drank a beer and just like made some stanza breaks, quote unquote. You know what I mean? Like that was so with this, I was trying to like, I don't know, man, like West Coast feel the vibe of, tercets and couplets. And then more and more, they just were couplets. And then I sort of stumbled into the sort of cheesy, but idea, maybe cheesy, maybe not, that the couplets could do a little more work by like, at least inside me, symbolizing the 2 children in the poems, the 2 parents, both grief and love, that sort of thing. Right. So that's how that form for me came out. And then I have another manuscript that I've written that's equally uplifting, is all about death. So, always trying to keep the party train going. And those poems have like quatrains and stuff. Yeah.
Getting fancy. Well, I was going to ask a question about trauma, but you know what? Like, let's turn it over maybe to the audience. Any questions that you all have? Lighten the mood.
Tomas, I like that you thought about trauma and you thought these people must be traumatized by Matthew's reading by now.
Yeah.
So they'll have something to say.
Yes. Well, yes. Go ahead.
Well, I just think like you've done a great job with it's kind of like solving the edges of life for your children and trying to make sure that they grow up well adjusted. But yeah, I'm curious because I didn't really get a huge sense of this in previous books you've talked about. Love it. But in terms of this one, like how do you nurture the like inner child? Like how do you find yourself when you're doing so much and just need some alone time? Like what are you doing that's kind of uplifting? I'm just curious.
Do you want me to repeat the question? Let me repeat the question, right? How do you, oh man, now I threw myself off by reminding myself. Nurture your inner child, uplift. Go ahead, man.
Yeah, yeah. How do you, how do you, while you're caring for children, working, writing, or, living your life, how do you nurture your inner child? How do you take moments for yourself? For me, some of that happens like when I'm spending time with my kids, in a real way. And then by the end of the night, I'm fucking exhausted. And I will eat some ice cream and watch a show and maybe read something. And then on the weekend, I take the time that I need, which right now seems to be like a lot of alone time after parenting all week. And that's the thing that helps me recharge, and also seeing being, trying to be particular about I spend time with people who I really who I not only feed, but who also, feed me. And I watch old movies and shit like that, things like that. Yeah. I've been doing, I'll tell you something very private. I've but only to you. On the weekend, I've also been doing this thing where there's a poem in this book called In Service that deals with body image and stuff, and my own body image things. But I've been doing this thing on the weekend when I'm alone where I put on a favorite album of mine, whether it's The Cure or whatever it is. And I just dance around my house in my boxers. And that's been my yoga, it's been great. And that's been really I feel good after that, at least for 48 hours, So.
All right, thank you. Yeah.
Some of my favorite memories as a kid is that my dad read to me all the time, and my mom too.
Hey,
So,
good on you.
What do you like to read to Owen, and what does he like you to read to him?
Oh man, well, it's constantly changed. I love I loved reading Piggy and Elephant books to Owen, but we've been, and we'll read those kinds of books during the day, but at night we've been reading these chapter books. So we read Charlotte's Web and Stuart Little and The Trumpet Swan, which not his best. But oh shit, what's this? Does anyone know what Moomin trolls are? You do? Are you the only one here? Moomin troll? 2 people. The Moomin trolls books. Amazing. Moomin trolls are these imaginary creatures who are part hippo, part something else. And it's amazing. I don't know if the author's Dutch or Swedish or something like that, but Moomin troll stories. Amazing. Great for kids, great for adults.
Do you have them in the bookstore?
I'm sure we have.
All right. Well,
You got Moomin. Yeah,
I wanna see
Moomin's
him now.
great.
I'm curious. Other questions? Yeah.
When you were developing these poems, were you just devoting your time and energy to this theme? And if so, did you just kind of exclude other work or do that, or you had a thought and turned it back toward this theme?
This book came out. Those early mornings, late nights. Those early days of lockdown were also when Owen's other parent and I were going through our separation. So there wasn't much more on my mind. than, you know, these subjects. And it's like, for me, it's a long book of poems. It's like 140 pages. But the first draft of it, I mean, not what I sent my editor, but the first draft was almost 200 pages, you know. And what I got rid of, this isn't your question, but this is an answer to something about organizing the book. I mean, to your question is no, this is all I was writing about. But organizing the book, I took out poems that I felt might embarrass my children later. I took out poems that felt too emotionally small and angry about my ex-partner, who, no matter what, did not deserve small and angry poems. And so I did housekeeping, you know, and got rid of all of those things. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny thinking about like when I did Red Dad and Red Families, I actually regret the first few years of doing those books. Like, I didn't share my essays around my son. And I realized real quick that anything I wrote, I actually read to my daughters, and they were about 8 and 10 at the time. So,
Right.
because yeah, permission to kind of talk about parenting is weird and tricky and important.
Totally.
All right.
Just a follow-up, Matthew, will you come back to those things that you excluded sometime, you think?
No. No, I mean, those things, I mean, especially like, I mean, I'm very much of the school that you should write about anything and everything. But I'm also like I understand, like in the poems that were like angry poems, I completely understand that. So there's nothing compelling me to make art out of it. And it's the same with like poems that were maybe a little too like, this is something cute that Owen said. I fully understand it. There's nothing for me to wonder about. So why, I would never make art about something that I understood. I would only ever want to make art out of something I would wonder about, that had mystery. Because otherwise, like I'm not sure what the point is, you know.
Maybe we could have a final question, and then you can do our final reading.
Okay.
Yes.
We have one from our online audience.
Wonderful.
Hey,
Yay,
up in
online
the
people.
balcony.
There's a lot of writing about motherhood, single motherhood. Was there any text that was able to guide you in your thinking about motherhood? Or was there any text that you could extrapolate thinking about other kinds of single parents?
It's a great question. So were there any other texts out there that were about like single fatherhood or fatherhood? I mean, definitely, I mean, there's not a lot, at least full, I mean, there's always, I mean, there's fathers writing poems, and there's poems about their kids. There aren't a lot of like whole collections. I mean, Cannell's Book of Nightmares would be one of them, I think. So I had individual poems. I mean, my mentor and father figure, Joe Millar, in his first book, Overtime, I mean, had some of the first poems that I read that were by a father that included a son, that were full of empathy and grace, even within hardship. So like, that was like the first, you know, kind of example for me. But parenting is parenting. I mean, I also got guidance on how to engage with the subject from poems by single mothers, you know. So so the answer is a bad answer, in that there wasn't really a text or something I thought, oh, I can follow this, you know.
Any final question from the audience?
Anybody want to know more about Moomintroll?
you'll end with reading the story, right? The book.
Oh man, I would
Do we have a
Moon
copy?
Patrol. I
I'm
would
joking.
tell you what, I would sit here and read Moon Patrol with you guys. It would be awesome.
All right, well then.
I'm guessing you know it by heart.
I do. I do.
All right, why don't you wrap us up then?
Okay, great. Oh, see, man, our timing's so on point.
I'm good with the
Yeah.
clock. All right.
Cool.
I'll
So,
step away so you
okay.
can have the space.
all right, I'm gonna pretend I know how to do this. I'm gonna put this back on here. Like that. Awesome. Oh man, I deserve so many cookies. I thought just because I like things like full circle, I thought to end the night, and thank you so much for coming. This means a lot to me. You guys are so great. Thanks for having me. But I thought I would read the first and then the last poem of the book. All right. So this is the first poem of the book, Goblin. In each of the stories where children are led out of their beds at night by a broken father or angry stepmother and marched off to be fed into the mouth of a dark wood, the children are supposed to die. In some stories, they do. In others, they survive, but must kill a witch or an animal in order to live, which is, to be fair, a different kind of death, but a death all the same. Imagine the fog around their small ankles like a shoreline in the dark. Imagine how cold their skin would be beneath the thin overcoats of their nightshirts. The little heat the parents are giving off beginning to dissipate like dew as the children take that last step into the copse of trees and are swallowed up. There are so many ways to eat the young. Yesterday, Owen was riding his red radio flyer tricycle around and around our red dining room table. Get me, Papa, get me. You're a goblin, come get me. And I know I shouldn't have really become a goblin, that was not what he was asking for. He wanted his papa and a funny voice. Instead, my body grew like a shadow and turned green, craven, and heavy. You can't run from the goblin, the goblin, the goblin, I sang and chased him round the table. You can't run from the goblin, I'm gonna eat your skin. Then he stopped, knowing that I was no longer there, and looked up at my face, and not seeing my face, began to cry and shake. I knelt down and held him and said, I'm sorry, it's just Papa. Was that too scary? We won't play that anymore. And he calmed a little and said, I don't want him, Papa. Tell the goblin not to come back. When you ask parents how they ever raised their children, they will often say, half the time I had no idea what I was doing. But I think we do know what we're doing. And so does the forest, and the dark in the forest, and the wind in the dark, and the beasts, the broken fathers, the angry stepmothers, the unconditional bond become errant. Now I'll read the last poem in the collection. And again, thank you so much to everyone. Returning. On the days the children are with their mother, the weight of them somehow lightens and expands. Wait, I think. Don't go is what I feel. Though I know they will be returning. Though I know they are loved by her. I walk around the 2-bedroom palace I have made for the 3 of us and lift their dirty clothes into my arms and cradle them. I gather all my children's dirty clothes around me, fanning them out like a gown and wait for them to come home. The smell of them rising up from the pleats of the gown, the sounds of them still hanging in the steam from the pasta. I am their lady in waiting and cannot wait to dress them again, to feed and bathe them, to hold them and smell their skin, but especially to feed them. That most of all. I pet the paws of stuffed animals and say, don't worry, they'll be home soon. Why is everything such a death? Death is a gradient, a going away and a coming back. Death, a bee, a fat one, alone and lost in winter. Fuck death. Give me life, even the one I've had with all its stupid troubles, with all its waiting around for love, with all its ignoring love, and with all its mistaking meanness for love. Give me a sink full of dirty dishes. Give me a cup of coffee. Give me my children, their sticky hands and feet. And finally, give me a first kiss that is also the last.
One more hand for Matthew Dickman. I'm very appreciative of you both. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you to all of you for joining us. This is very special. I'm really glad that we got to be a part of it. So thank you so much. We have copies of both Matthew and Tomas's books at the front register. Grab them there. Is it safe to assume that you're willing to sign copies of your books?
Tomas and I will sign copies of anybody's books in this bookstore.
I'm gonna find
Moomin
some
Troll.
Moomin.
Charlotte's Web, new novels. Just buy a bunch of books from this bookstore.
I totally co-sign that. Please do that thing. And I'm gonna have Matthew set up where these flowers are at the back desk, so you can find the books at the front, find them to the back. That's about it. If you need to know where to go, I will gladly tell you. And we will see you next time. Thank you so much.